So why did you choose to move here? It's one of the big questions. The people that really see the real Japan that I'm living in, this real Japan. Why did you choose to move here? And I give them the answer, and it's an answer that they usually, I think they hear the sounds, but they can't process the words. And I tell them that it's because it's beautiful. My wife and I just chose the most beautiful place that we could find and went for it. I mean, it's spring right now, but everywhere around me is erupting. And this is the version of Japan. It's, there's Tokyo and Osaka and all of the places that you go to and you see postcards of. But there's this other Japan, the Japan, the depopulated, old school roof having, single lane roads that two-way traffic could go on version of Japan. Ohayou gozaimasu. This version of Japan, it attracted us because back in America, we lived in Manhattan. We lived in East Harlem. If you took at Manhattan and you see the rectangle of Central Square, up in the upper right-hand corner of that Central Park, we lived just a few blocks from there. And that part of Manhattan was really smashed by the COVID pandemic. And it's all black and brown people. And during the Trump takeover of the United States government, it just got to us. It just, we were trapped in the house, we were trapped in the news cycle, and we were trapped in the cat and dog world that is late stage capitalism. I mean, not to go off, but we did well in Manhattan. But it was a game that we just saw we couldn't win. I mean, I was making a lot of money on paper, but we were still in a perpetual state of debt or near destitution. It's crazy. The healthcare system is for profit there. There's just a lot of things. When we moved to Japan, there are a lot of things that I didn't even know I was suffering from. Just like when I moved to Japan, there would be a lot of things that would make me suffer. Let me explain that a little better. You're doing radio taiso over there. Those are gentlemen. They're doing morning exercise. Every morning in Japan, workers do radio taiso, which is like it's back in the old days. They used to have on the radio a morning workout routine. They probably still have it on now. It's probably 99% version they have it on now. So everyone does these exercises to start the day. It's just the way it is. I think that actually connects to what I was saying about moving to Japan and not knowing how I was suffering there in America and how I would suffer here. Let me try to unfold that a little bit. But first, let's look at these plum blossoms. I love these weeping willow ones. Those blossoms are still coming. The cherry blossoms are leaving us, but these weeping willow like plum late cherry trees are coming in. And behind here, this all turns into lily pads with straight up lotus blossoms on them. Oh, those are the lily pads from last year. But this erupts with lotus flowers. It's like ridiculous. And this town is I'm a youngster in this town. This is the lake. Up there is the community center, that little greenhouse. This is the laundromat that's just for doing futons pretty much. It's an automat. It's a self-serve laundromat. I mean, if this were the West, this kawaii cute place overlooking this lake would be full of the privileged, man. It'd be full of people talking loud, and in that cycle of like eternal suffering. So I keep on saying I'm going to explain it, but I'm not explaining it. All right, let's start with America. Let's go back to America. So in America, I didn't realize the full impact of the for-profit healthcare scheme. We were paying about $2,000, let's just say even $2,000 a month for healthcare for my wife and I. So let's do some math. $24,000 a year for healthcare, with I think $5,000 deductible. So about $24,000 a year, right out of the gate, post-tax money. We were paying about $3,000 a month rent for 500 square feet. So let's see, 3,000 times 10 is 30,000. Then add the 6, that's 36,000. Add in the healthcare, it's like $60,000 worth of post-tax money just for a house and the ability to see a doctor. But to see a doctor, you had to pay a copay all the way up to, I don't know, what was it, $5,000 until the insurance actually kicked in. And then there was a cap on the insurance. And then if you needed something like a CAT scan, your private insurer would second guess that and deny you to get the thing the doctor said. Over here in Japan, that's like crazy. If you get sick, you just go to the doctor and it's $2. Again, Japan's not a utopia, but it's just like a completely different way. It's a way I didn't realize I was like suffering. Out here in the Inaka, in the countryside, I mean, this is a pretty rural situation we find ourselves in here. But the school system is like comparable or equal to what you would get if you were living in, going to the public school in a major metropolitan area. There's democratic socialism when it comes to schools. There's an equity in the school systems. In America, where we lived, because of our zip code, the schools were like atrocious. It's a K-truck, ubiquitous vehicle, the workhorse, the backbone of Japan is the K-truck. I didn't realize what it would be like to live out here in the absolute middle of nowhere. There's one Westerner in this town that I became friends with after being here for about over a year. Up until then, I'd never spoke any English here, and my Japanese is poor. So the isolation was pretty and is pretty wild. But to live in this quirky, I mean, everywhere in Japan is kawaii. I do not know what that machine is, but it's some type of a form. But to live amongst Japan, where everything is just different. No one will ever touch those little statues ever. I mean, here's Japan with the side of Japan. Big Asahi, this farm tool, pet bottle, and the back of a K-truck. I mean, that's extra Japan. Here we go. Ohayou gozaimasu! I look at these videos as like a pocket-sized friend, sort of rambling on. It was the late great Alec Baldwin said, a true friend is someone that you can tell the same story to 100 times, and then the 100th time the friend will say, "Ah, man, isn't that something?" In Japan, where I live, there's no illusion that that you're not alone. In America, there's an illusion that you're connected. But in my America, you know, we're all living in these bubbles. The real reason I made this video, oh, the voice of God in my head. We'll get back to that. But it's the end of the sakura season. The cherry blossoms have begun to lose their flowers. Look at that. The Sakura Tunnel is about to turn back into just trees again. Sakura season so brief. It's oh so brief. Here are a couple late guys. You guys were late to the party. But they're brothers and sisters. Beginning to fall. So the voice of God. I was talking to my friend and I was chatting with him sort of serious, sort of jokingly about, you know, and then I was thinking to myself in my head, and he stopped me. He's like, what do you mean talking to yourself in your head? And I always assumed that everyone had that little voice in your head, you know, like a little voice that you chat with about the trivial, the mundane, the important. It's, you know, not like there's a voice that's literally like, go to the desert and seek out 40 donkeys. Not that voice of God, but like a little voice in your head telling you, you know, your permanent friend, your subconsciousness, you know, like when you're washing the dishes and you're just sort of going over things with yourself. And my friend said that he doesn't have that voice in his head, and it seems like a crazy concept to him. Like there's no voice in his head. And I've been thinking about that for years now. And just over the past couple of days, you know, this crazy thought came to me. Like, maybe that voice is like literally the voice of God. like that may be the voice of God, that voice in your head. Here comes Japan for the side of Japan. Here comes a moped down the cherry blossom tunnel. That woman is like at least 70 if she's a day. Look at the sun coming through the channel. Soon these will just be good old trees again, because the party's come to an end. So yeah, the voice of God. Is that the voice of God coming in through? It seemed more profound when I was thinking that, and I had a whole construct about if that was the voice of God. I know when you say the voice of God, the room gets real quiet. It's like God is like this thing that's like a list of rules and punishments and to-dos and not to-dos. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like the God John Coltrane heard in this voice, in his head. The God that led Madonna to write Borderline, you know, like the Spirit. Like maybe that's the voice of God down in there. Look at this path. The cherry blossoms, it's so fleeting. It's such a fleeting thing. Here today, going tomorrow. Just like you and me. Yeah, pocket-sized friend. These little videos are like having a pocket-sized friend. Ooh, that guy's flying. I mean, wow. I like to go fast. I like to skateboard. I like motorcycles and all that stuff, but fuck, I like life. That's so dangerous to drive that fast. The Beatles wrote all their music in under 8 years. My kid's almost 8 years old. If I joined the Beatles in the delivery room that day, I'd be finishing up with Yoko right now in Central Park. I'd only have a few years to live, which could be the case. The Sakura tunnel is going from pink to green. I mean, how did the Beatles write all that music at such a young age? I mean, that's sort of like the voice of God thing. I mean, these little kids in their 20s, you know, they go from she loves you, yeah, 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 to he's a real nowhere man sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Isn't he a bit like you and me? I mean, those kids weren't even 30. Gives me chills. There's something out there. Can't just be circumstance and coincidence that's tying us all together. I mean, not to be all Yoda-like. There has to be something. Here comes a K car, K van, a minivan. K is a class of like small car here. Hi Sakura, I'm gonna miss you guys. I tried to send you a little message of temporary nature of existence out into the world. So I'm going to leave it right there. I hope this pocket-sized installment of a buddy, it'll reach one person. One person will watch this. One person will watch this. Sitting at their desk, having a coffee, maybe waking up in the middle of the night with some auto-suggest. One person will watch this. And that's something. So, until next time. I'll be here in Japan, potentially a few more of these musing pocket-sized friend videos. Let's take a look at this farmer. Why did you move to Japan? The little voice in my head told me to do it. God told me to move to Japan. Goodbye, friend.